All right, everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Collective podcast. This is season 9, episode 21. This is a special one to me because, Bill, not only are you a former 0311 Marine, you're a police officer. I'm a former 0311 Marine and a police officer. So, usually it's special when we get like another service member on, specifically a Marine for us, because Jesse and I were both in the Marine Corps, and then same thing with fellow police officers. But to have both on 0311, I got out before I went the 69 route, the platoon sergeant bullshit, because I didn't want to do the admin stuff. But nonetheless, excited to have you on. I appreciate you. How we doing?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. We've been talking for a while, so it's good to link up. I like what you guys do, so I want to support you guys however I can.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Likewise. I feel like that's the common trend when it's like I listen to all these podcasts in our community and it's like we're so damn busy. Like the beginning of every podcast starts out with, we've been talking about doing this for a while. We've been trying and it's so difficult, right? Like details, court comes up, all this shit, and you have to postpone everything and all that. So definitely glad we can finally make this one happen though. I was also told to say hi and to refer to you as the Lord Commander of the Night Watch.
Oh, that's funny.
Uh-huh.
We could get it. We could get into that. That's a good
Okay. All
one.
right. Cool.
That's a good
Cool.
one.
I just got a message literally right before recording. He's like, make sure you refer to him as this.
I think I know who it
Uh,
is too.
Sweet. So I am going to mention our podcast sponsor really quick. So Brain Performance Technologies, um, specialty mental health clinic. They have clinics in Las Vegas, Sacramento, San Jose, doing TMS, so transcranial magnetic stimulation, delivers electrical pulses to specific areas on the scalp to alter brainwave activity and treat post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, ADHD, OCD, and addiction orders. It's drug free, non invasive, improves brainwave function. Improvements include better sleep, better mood, and bigger gains in improved mental health. Include different protocols like RTMS, MERT, and its newest one, SAINT. BBT is an authorized TRICARE provider and can assist with insurance authorization for qualifying TRICARE patients. You can learn more today at www.1bbt.com. And then I just recorded a podcast with them yesterday, season 9, episode 20. So, um, very nice to have them on board. I didn't know too much about like TMS and brain performance technologies, and fully covered through TRICARE, whether you're TRICARE Prime, Reserve, Select, West Coast, East Coast, it doesn't matter. They'll take care of you. Um, so yeah, that is it. And then today's also a good day. We just connected a first responder in California to one of our competent, culturally competent and vetted therapists in 1 hour and 22 minutes, which was pretty damn cool. Literally right before hopping on the podcast with you. So first responder reached out, filled out our financial assistance form, and then we were able to get the waiver over to him and board approval in 1 hour and 22 minutes, which is pretty damn cool. And then as of now, we're at $312,000 spent in therapy and 284 people that have gone through our nonprofit to get connected to therapy, and just over 3,000 therapy sessions covered at 100% or financially assisted. So just a quick little update for the audience in here. So today's a good day. I'm excited about that. So,
Dude, that's
um,
awesome. Good news.
yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool. We had no idea it was going to get to this point at all. Not the smartest tools in the toolbox, as you know, typical. Jesse was a 0341, I was a 0311, and it's like, eh, we don't really know what we're doing, but somehow we figured it out and we're doing pretty damn good. So,
Yeah, good
well,
for
it's
you guys.
rewarding.
That's good, man.
Yeah, man. All right, that is enough of me talking. I want to take a little break here. Can you give us a introduction of yourself, the talk really quick about the two deployments, time in the Marine Corps, transition to LEO, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I had kind of a weird path because I was all over the place. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps like right after high school, like everybody else. Went 0311 route, and then I was in that role for a while, and then went to the reserve component, and that's when I became a cop after that first deployment to Afghanistan, and that was in 2011. The day we got our activation orders was actually the day that Osama bin Laden got killed. So we were like confused, like I thought this was it, you know. But
Yeah.
so that's when we went the first time. And then I spent that time in there as a doing the reserve component and as a cop. And then 2019 comes around, and we go back to Helmand Province, 2019, for a different type of mission. We were there for a bit longer than the first time. But so I was playing like a cop role, reservist role with that. And then when I got back from that deployment, I lat moved to counter intel and went to go HUMIT. And that was short lived. And then my daughter was going to be born, and the choice was, be there for the birth of my daughter or go to the schoolhouse and continue this. And I was like, that was the tipping point for me to be like, I gotta, make a choice for the family. So I chose to get out and do that. And it was a great decision. And then, just continued the law enforcement stuff throughout. So that's just like that in a nutshell.
Got it. So how many years total in the Marine Corps?
14.
14. Shit, you were almost at 20, bro.
Dude, almost at 20, man.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And like my wife tells me every single day when I'm like, I don't want to do the drive, the 1 week in a month is bullshit. All the government mandated training you have to do at home, and then it's like you're not getting paid for that. Like I'm so over it. And she's like, the benefits, the retirement, TRICARE, baby TRICARE babies are cheap. I'm like, all right, I'll stick it out. It's
Yeah.
it's tough though, man. It's a lot. And I feel like one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is being not just like an LEO, but being any sort of first responder while being in the reserves, and people are always like, oh, it's only 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, and is a little more than that.
Yeah, it's tough, dude. It's tough balance. It
Hmm.
was stressful that year. Before the second deployment was like, because you're getting activated, and being the platoon sergeant role at that time, like that was the most stressful year that I had, balancing work, like going for a promotional exam at work, cases at work,
Hmm.
training at work, and then all of the stuff that's associated with like platoon sergeant stuff. And what I tell guys all the time is like, you could be a platoon sergeant and not have that workload, but your guys are going to suck. They're going to hate you, and you're not going to do a good job. So if you want to do a good job and it's a part-time gig, it's kind of like a second full-time job. It
100%.
really is,
Yeah.
if you want to do it right. And if you're in that position, you're like, I believe, like morally obligated. If you're in charge of other people, like you need to do everything that you can to ensure their success with that. So like that was extremely stressful, juggling all of those different things. And even from being like a small business owner now, like I juggle all the different tasks of the business, right? But it's all under one business. Whereas like you're balancing cop stuff, military stuff. It's not the same. So it's two different hats. It was a lot. It wasn't like unbearable, but it was just a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I'll tell you, going from the Marine Corps to the Coast Guard, so the Coast Guard, you can actually drill for points. So, like, we can actually put in a no paid drill, which goes towards like a point for retirement if you do stick it out and do the 20, just for working out. So, you get
Oh,
one
okay.
point a week. And then, like, when you do the government mandated training, or like if you were, it's like your division chief is equivalent to like your platoon sergeant in the Coast Guard, but you can actually put in for drill points, no pay, which help you out when it comes time to retire. Where like when I was in the Marine Corps Reserve, it was, hey, you got to do your PME, your government mandated training on your off time because we don't have computers at the unit. And the thought of even getting paid or getting a drill for that was not even a thing.
Not happening.
No, like it blows me away. So, so that's cool. At least like that's one of the things that I've noticed, like with that odd transition. Because every time I tell somebody, I'm like, yeah, I went from the Marine Corps to the Coast Guard, they're like, what the hell? I'm like,
I
yeah,
understand.
like there's some pros to it, and honestly, like I didn't want to stay in the Marine Corps because I was going to take over the platoon and do all that admin platoon sergeant shit, and I dreaded that, and then that was going to mean that I was going to be counting how many MREs we needed for a field op instead of actually prepping like a 5 paragraph order and going out for a drill weekend and actually having fun. I was like,
No,
I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. So,
that is the downside of the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was actually my favorite job. I liked it. I'm kind of bummed I didn't get to do more with Humit because I was really excited about that. Um, and there's not much like known about it. The only reason I found out was working with them
Mm.
in 2019 a lot. But yeah, I like the platoon sergeant stuff a lot actually. Um, if I wouldn't have liked it if I had my daughter when I was doing it though. I wasn't married yet, so I was just living with my now wife and she was working, so like we didn't see each other a lot anyway, so just because of work schedules. If I had my daughter, then it would have just been too much. But yeah, dude, I liked it. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah, definitely makes sense when it's like before you have kids and everything, you can kind of manage it. I don't know how some of these, and even like all the O's, all the officers, they have like weekly meetings on top of their jobs. I'm like, this is way too much, man. I'm trying to hit 20 to get a retirement out of this thing and about face and deuces, like
Yeah.
I am done. So back to you. So you joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, like pretty much everybody else. And then you were in the Marine Corps. Were you active originally or reserve component?
No, I started out in the reserve component.
Reserve, and then
Yep.
a few years till you could become a cop. Did you become a cop at like 21 or 22?
Yeah, right. Like no, actually 20, like 23,
Okay,
23.
got
Yeah.
it. Okay, so towards the end of your first enlistment, essentially.
Yeah. So yeah, right after. Yeah, right towards the end of the first. Actually, no, because that first contract was 6 years for the reserve contract. So it was like, yeah, it was like halfway, a little bit closer to the end of the first one.
Got it. Okay, yeah, it was like a 6x2.
Yeah,
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then so you deploy what were you, a lance or a corporal when you deployed
I
the
was a
first time?
Lance.
A lance. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so a lance 0311. So talk about the being a reservist E3 infantry. Obviously your whole job is to essentially go kill and locate and close with and destroy the enemy. Um what was that like for you at a young age preparing for a combat deployment?
Oh man. So that I'll start off with this. So the mission that we had, that we were given in 2011 was actually like pretty cool, considering that we were a reserve unit. Like we were essentially occupying patrol bases and going like hunting for guys, which was
That's
not
legit.
normal. Not a lot of people were doing that with reserve units, so it was really cool. The As far as like the mindset, like being young, you're full of piss and vinegar, and you think you're invincible, and you can do a PFT hungover in Vans skateboard shoes and be fine, right? But the um the one thing that I didn't know, like really know until you get there, is like what war looks like what the reality of this is. And obviously it puts it in perspective for you. So like going into that, I would say like borderline naive to it, because my perspective was everything that I've known, from my grandfather talking about it to friends to, people, and a lot of the experiences varied. So or movies and stuff. So you don't really have a perspective. So you have this idea of what it's going to be, and then you go there and you're like, huh, this is different and it's real. And my mindset shifted really quickly, like after a few months there, the first time. But like going into it, man, it was like a culture shock, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I
know,
know that's totally understandable. And so I went the same route. My original enlistment was reserve, the six years active reserve, and then 2 years inactive reserve. And then the only reason how I ended up doing 7.5 years is because we did a unit deployment program to Japan, which is nowhere
mm,
near what you did. We ate and drank all the sushi and sake in Japan. Um, but that was it for me. So I didn't get to do anything like what you got to do and experience. So but prepping for that, and you say like your whole mindset shifted. Were like back then, and this might be dating you and us a little bit, but how was the training pre-deployment for like not only like the mount stuff and all that, but like the mental health training, any awareness of taking care of each other, resources, anything like that?
Dude, as far as like the training up for in regards to like mental health, there was none of it because that stigma of like be tough, grind it out, don't talk about nothing, nothing can bother you. That was still full and well at the time. And even the senior guys, like we had some really solid senior guys that were, you know, we had some 3-5 Marines that did some stuff in Sangin.
Mm.
And that was going on while we were there. But even before that, like the push through Marja, and then we had a guy, one of my good buddies, one of the best like leaders that I've ever met. He was in the initial push to like establish Kuwait as like a fob, and like the initial push through like Fallujah and stuff, and the march to Baghdad. And so you got some like heavy hitters that have like seen and done things. And when it comes to like the mental health stuff, those guys were never talking about stuff. They were always like the hard dudes. You're running range 400 and they're the ones running up and down, and you're like, man, this guy is just a rock star.
Mm.
But nothing that was ever talked about as far as like mental health or how do you deal with this stuff, or you know what to do if things are bothering you. You'd get like the suicide prevention class, which you're forced to sit through and pretty much tells you all this list of things to look for in people. And then everybody that that ends up committing suicide, you're like, huh, none of those things on the list like were there. So
Hmm.
you know what I mean? At least that was my experience. So it was
Yeah,
very
it
vanilla.
was the same for me too. It
Yeah.
was the same because every and I mean it was probably the same for you too, where every year it'd be one drill weekend of like an admin stand down, and then they would rotate through. It'd be like sergeants or staff sergeants that would come in and be like, all right, next topic is suicide prevention and awareness, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's sitting there usually on their phones, and then 20, 30 minutes goes by, and it's like, hey, there's a roster going on or a roster going around, sign it, put your name there. And then when everybody signed it, we're done. We'll go on to the next one and let's break for chow. Like
Yep.
that was pretty much it. That was pretty much it. So the mental health stuff wasn't there. How was the training leading up to it? Because I can imagine you had your senior dudes that have been in the shit, being like, "This is what worked for us. This is what saved lives. This is what got people killed." So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we obviously we were spend like 99% of our time in the field, which was good. Enjoyed it. A lot of, and the way that we prepped for this deployment was going off of guys, because we went to Pendleton to do our workup. So we were working with some of the I want to say it was like 3-5, or I forget what unit was helping like kind of guide our training. But their experience in Afghanistan was like more in the mountains, in
Mm.
the mountain areas. So
Hmm.
they were in some of them in Helmand. But so we were doing like a lot of rucks. We were doing a lot of like patrol base operations, the mountain warfare package and stuff. And the training was it wasn't good. And what I mean by that is you'd have like, you go and you do we'd go out to the field and we'd do like a mock raid, right? And they'd have the role players, and because it's a pre-deployment workup, the budget is a lot better for training. So you get the role players that are like actual like former Afghan nationals that are like actors with the makeup and the whole nines, and you're being evaluated by active duty coyotes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember multiple training exercises where, and I'm a Lance, so I'm not privy to like the leadership conversations at this time, but you hear the rumors, and it's like, man, we failed that. We failed that because of this. And we failed it because of that. And we ended up having to redo a couple of them because the individual hard skills weren't there for the guys. And I think it was because it was like kind of like a good old boys club throughout the training. And, all the Lances that are new end up doing majority of the work while everyone else kind of picks the easier job, and guys weren't task organ correctly, or doing doctrinal training to doctrine, just kind of making up things. And so it wasn't good in that sense. It was enjoyable because I liked doing it,
Hmm.
but I didn't know it was bad at the time until we get downrange. But yeah, it wasn't the best quality.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then you ended up doing how long was the deployment over there? The first one.
We were there for, let's see, I want to say like 5 months. We got cut short, like, and the after action report from that deployment was not good. It was really, really bad. On top of like all of the issues is, I mean, I don't want to go too crazy into it, but
Yeah.
I guess they weren't expecting us to do a lot of the things that we were doing and a lot of the resistance that we were meeting. Um, and taking casualties and stuff like that. Like I think they what I like to the phrase that I like to say is like, I don't think they were playing for keeps. Like they thought they're going to throw this reserve unit in to just chill at this patrol base, and the unit that we ripped with, like they hadn't gone out into villages or haven't been looking for stuff. They were just chilling there. So like they didn't have much of a kinetic experience.
Yeah.
And so I think they thought that we were just going to come in and do that, and that wasn't the case. And so when things started happening, um, not only with us but in the same theater with other units, like things just got they're like pulled us like hey, head back, you know.
Got it. So during that time, not expecting it, but you're punching out to go on patrols and doing all those things and the casualties. I want to kind of talk about that a little bit and feel share whatever feels comfortable. But um, at a young Lance Corporal level, being on a patrol or doing a raid or CQB type stuff, whatever, and taking casualties and seeing that for the first time as a young man, as a young Marine, what was kind of the mentality shift there, and how did that impact you, if you remember?
Yeah, so like majority of the casualties that were like U.S. forces with us were like mainly IEDs, and some of them were you know pressure plates, like people stepping on them, and other ones were ones attacking vehicles. That was the biggest one with that, and I remember like pretty vividly. This is where like things started to become real. So we hit a couple of IEDs, and we had one guy like blow both of his eardrums out, and mess the truck up, but he was still okay. So like he was still going on patrols with us, even though he couldn't hear anything. And then got a couple guys got rocked from it, so we were like, okay, this is real. But then we had a guy adjacent. He was in a different platoon, but he was in our unit. He stepped on a pressure plate, and so we had to. We were like the quick reaction force for their patrol base. So we went out to like assist with stuff and like gather up whatever we needed or help out, however. And I remember like having to bring a garbage bag with like his feet back to like the CP, like me and a couple buddies. And I remember like what like you don't want to like leave your buddy's foot somewhere, right? But like that moment, like when picking up that and like carrying that or having that given to me, it was just because I remember just standing outside the CP, me and a few guys, whoever was on the truck with us, with the garbage bag, and it's just like what do we do with this? And that's when I was like, all right, this
Yeah.
is real. So that's kind of where that kicked in, and it was up until that point, I would say I was still in that like I'm invincible mindset, right? Even because like I said, we hit those other IEDs and minor injuries, but you're like, oh, dude, that's no big deal,
Yeah.
fine. And then this happens, you're like, oh shit, like we're playing for keeps, you know. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does 100%. And I've never heard anything close to that where it's like the first time this is a reality check, like shit's real, like this is life or death, and then you're carrying somebody's feet and legs in a garbage bag and you're like, what the fuck? Like that is not normal at all. Um, not at all. I appreciate you sharing that. Um, and then throughout that throughout that time, did you guys have any suicides while you guys were deployed, or any like mental health concerns or any problems like that going on this first deployment?
Yeah, so on the first one, we had a really he was actually a really awesome leader too. His name was Alex Ramon, and he was out of he was in an what's that word? Where he's in a different unit and he like hops on with the deployment. I forget what they call it. Not an adjunct, a
Uh, Augment?
yeah, an augment. Yeah, he was
T-
augmented to us as a platoon sergeant, and he was an adjacent platoon to us, but really, really good guy, a lot of experience. And he ended up, I wasn't very close with him then, but I remember like, everyone looked up to this guy. He had left that deployment early, and there was rumors of like issues with his family. And so he left, and we didn't see him for a while. And then it wasn't until like a few years later that he committed suicide home, not during the deployment, but um, after a couple years later. But the last memory that I have of him was like, we're over there, and then he ends up leaving due to family problems. And then the next news that I hear about him is, he ended up committing suicide. So it was like, that was I didn't know it then. But as far as like on the deployment, we had guys that they would talk about it, um, saying things, and I remember specifically a few people where you get that suicide prevention training, and you got a kid like you're just riding the Humvee, whether it's a field op or whether you're on patrol on deployment or whatever. And I remember kids saying stuff like that. I think he's like in the turret. And then I was just like, I just asked him because the only thing I got from the training is like, just ask the hard questions type of thing, right? So just asked him. I was like, dude, do you like feel like you want to kill yourself? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, ah, uh, what do I do now?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I asked the hard question. Now you said, yeah, no.
Yeah, was not ready for the answer. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not, it's all you can do about it is laugh now. But so then all I knew how to do was like, well, I'll go tell my team leader. And then
Hmm.
I tell my team leader and I tell them and end up dealing with him. And then he ended up being fine. Like he stayed. He didn't like they didn't kick him out. So he might have just been having a rough time. But that happened a few times. Not very many, maybe once or twice. But that was it as far as like on that deployment in
Got
regards to that.
got it. And then so you guys returned back, and then how was the adjustment from the first deployment, this deployment that we're talking about, back to um, reserve life?
It was tough because there was a ton of bad shit that happened on that deployment that was directly due to shitty leadership. And that is what catapulted my drive for like understanding leadership and like how to not, I guess you could say those people that were there taught me the biggest lessons as far as like what not to do. Because that's where I learned what the real result is for poor leadership, which is dudes getting like morbidly wounded or killed.
Yeah, dead.
And whether it was US forces or allied forces. Um, and so that really catapulted me because we even had, you know, a group of guys that, um, the leadership was terrible, and they were chasing ribbons, and they were wanting to, get into all these ticks that maybe they didn't need to just so they can get some ribbons, and guys end up getting hurt, and then guys end up speaking out about the way things are run with that particular group of leaders, and they ended up like ostracizing these guys and like sending them to a patrol base in the middle of nowhere because they didn't agree with how they were doing business. And I'm really good friends with a lot of those guys. And it was sketchy when you think about it now. There was like six of them, like maybe, no, eight, because they were called like the Exiled Eight.
Oh
And
God.
they
Yeah.
were eight dudes on a PB by themselves in the middle of the desert. And like the highest rank, I believe a staff NCO ended up going there, who was also like in the same boat, like for the guys, but or he wasn't at the time. He might have been a sergeant or whatever. But it's like that's it. Like your OIC is sergeant, whoever, corporal, whoever, in the middle of nowhere. It's like
After, for,
yeah, because I remember talking to guys, and they were like, they had before that happened, I think they had to post a fire watch outside the leadership's like tent because they thought dudes were gonna go kill him in the middle of the night. Like not bad guys, like other Marines were like,
as a Marine.
"Fuck these
Yeah.
guys!" Like
Yeah.
we're in the middle of the desert, like so they would have that, and it was like that's a clue, like that's a
That's
big clue, man.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Oh man. Wow. All right. So obviously you learned what not to do and all that. Um, so then, so second deployment, right?
Yep.
Obviously, all this shit that you've learned, and granted, I'm sure 2019, like your mission looked a little different.
Night and
Um,
day.
but you learned what not to do from the first one as a lance, and then what were you when you went in 2019? Were you a sergeant squad leader, or is that when you were platoon sergeant?
Yeah, the second deployment, I was a platoon sergeant.
Got it. Okay. So then, so talk a little bit about what you learned and how you implemented them. Granted, the different mission.
Yeah, so having learned like, the realities of poor leadership on the first one, the biggest thing that I did in the time between that one and the next one was I made this decision, um, mainly for like the guys that I was with. I was like, because I felt so strongly about it, and I'm not sure why, but I was like, I will not allow these guys to go on another deployment with people like that. So I was like, all right, well, if that's the case, that means I need to stick around. And if I'm gonna stick around, I have to learn about this stuff so that I don't do the same things that we saw. So I did the thing that everyone would do is I started reading the books and like really really like reading about leadership and really just studying the art of the infantryman and like really becoming proficient with doctrine and like really holding myself to like a professional warfighter, I guess you would say, right? Like understanding all of the things that we needed to do, going through the TNR manual, understanding like everything from individual tasks to like what the platoon is tasked with and how to coordinate and manage that. And so I'm doing all of that. And then when we get on that first deployment, the biggest thing that I realized was like, yeah, all that stuff is good, but I had a really good platoon commander too. So that was the other thing that was very really helpful. Is me and him were on like the same page. He was a cop. He was a stud. He like PT stud, like one of the best dudes I've ever met. So we jived really well, and so we would, our mission first and foremost was like, all right, you take care of the tactical operations, and I'll take care of the guys, right? And so, which is like how it should be, right?
Should be, yeah.
And one of the things like that I think gets lost with the platoon sergeant shit is people think that taking care of the guys is like you get them chow, you get them water, and that's it. But it's so much more than that. And what I was finding is like if you can be there for your dudes, like no matter what, like yeah, you get them chow, you get them water, but you make sure like they're not burning out to the point where they're like ineffective, because there's a difference between like pushing through, a hard mission or a long day and getting burned out to the point where you're utterly useless. And if you're utterly useless, I would rather you be back in the rear or in a position where it's not, detrimental than put you in that position and then which endangers other people.
Yeah.
So like just knowing your guys to the point where like what's going on with their personal life, what their ticks are, what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they care about, and you're able to relate to them on a personal level, change the game. And I wasn't perfect at it, but I tried really hard to make sure that like I was doing that for them. So when I did that, I noticed that they would whatever it was, once I built that relationship with them, whatever it was that needed to get done, it was never a question. There was never, and it wasn't out of fear of punishment. It was out of like respect for like me and the squad leaders that we had. So that was a really cool lesson, and that was a really cool thing that I learned. And I'd be interested to hear. I talked to some of them today. The ones that I talk to, they say good stuff, but I always wonder what they think, if it was useful or not. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was, right? And maybe kind of like a blessing and a cursing that your first deployment you had shitty leadership, but you like took mental notes and learned all of that, and then seems like you worked your ass off, applied yourself to the best that you can, learned from their failures and the stuff that I mean, I'm sure that you picked up stuff that you liked as well. It's like in field training for police officers, right? Like you get brand new cop goes to three different, pick what you like, pick what you don't like, and then mold yourself.
yep,
Same kind of thing here. So I'm sure it felt good for you when you get into a role like a platoon sergeant when you can actually help mold yourself and then take care of the guys. When you're a lance, you're just doing lance corporal things with your friends. You're just like doing what your corporal or sergeant tells you to do, and then you go do it. So
Hmm.
I'm sure it felt uh, good to do. And then how was it deploying as a platoon sergeant compared to a lance?
It it was it was different because when you're a lance, like you're hooking and jabbing, you're in the trenches, and you build those bonds with people because it's you're all doing the stuff that nobody wants to do, or you're doing the stuff that's really awesome, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But as a platoon sergeant, like you're not sleeping in the same hooch as the guys. You're with like the staff and O, or it's me and the platoon commander, and they're it's not they're, dude, when you're not in the trenches with the guys, and not to say that we weren't like doing operations and missions with them in 2019, but the day to day, you know what I mean, like with everything, like for example, like if you're in training, right, you're running, coordinating the range, but if it's a squad range, like you're not doing anything, right? If you're at a platoon range, like yeah, you're running Kazovac and getting water, like it's not the same. So on the deployment, it was cool to put like planning and operational skills into effect, like creating and generating, orders and mission planning, and we could get into that stuff too, and executing missions. But your guys are executing it now. It's not, you're not the guy who's doing it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that was a little bit different, but I would say that was more rewarding for me, doing that than doing the cool shit is always fun.
yeah,
But as far as like life skills and things that I took away from that experience of, I guess you could say, like using decentralized command was the biggest thing that I learned. Empowering the people that are underneath you to make decisions and don't think that you know everything, and
mm,
like bouncing ideas off them, and almost like letting them come up with plans, and just you being the backstop to be like, nah, that's you got to rethink that. Come back to me with something else, and giving them some skin in the game.
yeah,
Dude, I
yeah,
saw guys develop like crazy to the point where we were planning R&S missions at that time, and in the beginning I was planning everything, all the coordination and everything, and towards the end, I was just like, hey, you guys want to go out on a mission tonight? Like, yep. I'm like, all right, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that. Let me know when you're good. And I just meet them in there. They do the briefing. They come up with this. They come up with that. I would coordinate like ISR and stuff, but dude, they were doing everything. And I was like, dude, this is cool.
yeah. Hell
This
yeah,
is cool.
that's awesome. I'm sure that felt good for you too, and because it's like, well, once the deployment's done and then you guys do your demobilization, and I mean, for a lot of reservists, depending on their contract, it could be like, hey, demob DD 214, sick, later, God bless America, Semper Fidelis, and then you're out, where it's like all that leadership, training, knowledge, experience is now just left, right?
Yep.
Is now gone. So I think it's cool to hear that that's what you did when you're like, kind of like, hey, this is what I want you guys to do, and then go ahead, mess it up, make mistakes, come to me, and then I'll help you reorganize it, or to focus on what the priorities are with this, and focus on the commander's intent and all this bullshit.
Hmm.
But I think it's cool, and that's like the legacy that you leave behind, when it's like, oh, Brasky taught me XYZ. Oh, even as a corporal, before I got squad leader, I was doing these orders, which maybe some guys in the other platoon didn't get to do. So kudos to you, man.
Yeah. If anyone takes anything away from this too, I think, and this is actually, I would say, the same issue in law enforcement. If you're in the military and you're in a leadership role, like I can't harp on the decentralized command enough, and like letting your guys make decisions and let them fail and let them make mistakes. And law enforcement is probably worse at that than the military. I think the military does a better job at it. But like cops, on FTO and stuff like that, generally they'll let you make small mistakes, right? But when you allow people to make mistakes and learn, barring things that are going to get them hurt or killed and stuff like that, right? That's obviously your job to step in, but like let them mess up and let them fix the mess that they made. And that lesson that they learned from that is going to be way better than you stopping them every 3 minutes and be like, no, 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 do this. Hey,
Yeah.
don't do that in your report. Don't do that in your report. Like,
Yeah.
dude, just submit the report. Like, I'll check it to make sure you're not lying, right? But submit it. And if the boss rejects it, you fix it, dude. You know, like that's how you learn.
Mhm.
And allowing guys to do that, I think is huge. And then once and it only take like one or two times. You know, it's not a perpetual thing.
Yeah, been there. Yeah,
You'll
depending
you'll,
on the
you'll
screw
learn.
up. As long as you're not violating people's rights and you're gonna like get the department civilly sued or whatever, like I've been there too when it was like when I was brand new, my FTO was like, I let you just fuck up. And I'm like, why? And then he explained everything. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's good. You know, it's not like it doesn't exist, but it's just so
Yeah.
rare. So it's good that you had,
Yeah.
someone like that. You
Well,
know,
because a
with
lot of the time, and we could talk about this for hours, but nowadays what I'm seeing in law enforcement and even back in California was, hey, we're so short staffed, we gotta push people through. And even here in Louisiana, it's like when I came here, I went through like a modified like little academy and then I hopped in the training. Um, and in FTO, I only did 2 months, kind of just like to learn how they do everything out here because like being a cop's essentially the same no matter where you go. Um, and then there were some of the people when it's like, yeah, we're gonna cut them loose because we need to fill this shift because we're short. Somebody is out for a shooting, so let's just push them through. And then
hmm
2 months later, you're like, dude, what is going on with this person? What? And it's like, ugh, I'm like,
yeah,
so
and
frustrating, man.
it's frustrating too because like there is such thing as standards, and you see that it's no different up here, man. Like you see guys get pushed through FTO for the same reasons, and then they're still a disaster, and it's like, or they're on FTO and you got a good FTO who's like, this dude's not passing this phase, and they're like, no, he is.
Higher ups
Like,
are like, yep, pass them.
and it's like, that's a cultural problem. That's a cultural leadership problem that everybody that I talk to that's a cop that's level headed has seen it, and all of those discussions won't fix it because it is a cultural problem, and the people that wear the brass, um, they're the only ones that could change it, or you stay in long enough to replace them.
Yeah,
But it's some of these smaller places like you'll never replace them. Like agency where I worked, there's like 40, it was like 40 people, man. So like if you got a lieutenant and he's a young lieutenant and you're going to do 20 years and get out, you're never going to get that spot unless
mm-mm.
something, there's always a way, right? He leaves or he gets promoted to chief or something like that. You're never getting that spot. So like sometimes these guys feel discouraged because they experience that. And it's like, oh, I'll stay in and fix it. And it's like, dude, if you look at the math, man, you're
Yeah,
you're
I
get you're
think
trying to get
math,
blood out of a stone.
math ain't math, and
It's not mathing, dude.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a look how easy it was for us. We both like mine in that it's so easy for us to just transition into that, and then we can go on a rabbit hole. Circling back,
Yeah, circle back.
let's bring us back to Marine Corps, and then I think I'm almost done with kind of the Marine Corps topics and all that.
Okay.
And then so obviously a good second deployment, platoon sergeant, right? Get to mold minds of the your team leaders, your squad leaders, and help them prepare orders, all that stuff. Different experiences for you, and then you get back. How much longer did you have on your contract when you guys demobbed from the second deployment?
Um, oh man, on my contract, dude, I think it was right about. I think I had like a year left when I
Mm.
got back. So
So
yeah,
then you
something
just
like.
went back to normal drilling for a year and then got out, or
So
how?
I went. Yeah. So what happened was, I'm trying to think of the. I might be off with the math here a little bit, but we get back. We do like I don't know, a couple week demob in Lejeune. I forget how long it was. And then we go back to the home drill center and there for like a week or two and then done. And then right after that, I began my lat move process to the counter intel unit for HUMIT.
Yep.
And so that was quite a bit of ways from where I was living. So I was like going through that process and drilling with them. And then that's like at the height of COVID. So like drills were then remote, and
Yeah.
it was so weird, dude. And the intel world is so different. It's like the gray area if I'm going to equate it to law enforcement, right? You know, people talk about the thin blue line, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? But you got like the cops and you got the criminal element and you got that gray area in the middle. That's like the intel world for the military. It's this gray. And so like you're dealing with dudes like the people that were my peers was like chief warrant officers. And I'm like, dude, I'm
Yeah.
a E6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those drills were just weird,
Yeah.
and different. So, but yeah, it was not too long, and then that I drilled through that period up until it came time for me to go to the schoolhouse down in Dam Neck, and they were saying that was when my daughter was going to be born. I was trying to postpone the school date so that I could be there for that, and they told me that if I postpone the school date and I don't have the MOS, you can't be in the unit. So then it's like, well, I guess I'm not going to be in the unit. So,
Yeah.
and then
And
that's where that ended.
yeah, pop smoke and take care of the family.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good decision. And you said 14 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a long ass time, man. So what was so two things, right? The entire 14 years in, what was the best part about being in the Marine Corps?
Hmm. I would say man, I learned a lot, dude. I learned so much about people. I learned a lot about obviously like discipline, not like discipline like listen to what I say, but like the discipline for like what you need to have for yourself to be successful, because that's always tested. But I would say the biggest thing that I learned, and the thing I most enjoyed, was working with the caliber of people that I got to work with on the last one, and being able to build relationships with people and have a common goal and accomplish it. I would say that was the best thing that I got to experience um, on that last one. That'll take the cake for sure. And to give you an example of it is, so having experiences from 2011 we talked about. We're getting towards the tail end of this one in 2019, and the whole reason that guys like me and Chad and a bunch of other guys that well, Chad, but
Yeah.
a bunch of other guys started doing these reconnaissance and surveillance missions was when I first got there, like 2 weeks before I got there on Advon, the base was attacked. So the Taliban infiltrated it was a March 1st attack. So the Taliban infiltrated the Afghan national fob right next to us and started massacring all the Afghans, and then started attacking the Marines that were on post on the walls. And it was a giant like firefight between Marines and the Taliban, but the Taliban were wearing like Afghan army uniforms. So like guys don't know if they're shooting at this, and it is a mess. And it was to the point where like the fobs shared a wall, so there's no space between these fobs. Like it's HESCO barriers, and it's U.S. forces this side, Afghan forces the other side. And we had a 2-star on the base, and he calls in like he calls in air to drop
Close?
to drop like GBUs on the Afghan base for the dudes that like were attacking. So it was a mess, right? So we get there, and I'm looking at like the Force Pro measures that are in place, and I'm like, we don't have the ability to stop a VBID at our ECP, right? And a couple months into that, our battalion lost 3 guys to a VBID. So I'm
At
like,
TV?
not I believe it was like them exit. Yeah, it was in relation to an ECP.
Got
But I'm
it.
like, we don't have the ability to stop a VBID here.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
blast radius from this is a problem, right? So I was like, all right, what can we do? So we tried to get together and get that up to speed, and we generally did that pretty well. We had good guys who were in charge of that. But then we were like, all right, well, let's be proactive with this. Like, if we know stuff's going on, so let's start pushing out and gathering some intel and creating some things. So we'd push out as far as we could on the battle space that we were occupying, and we would bring like SIGINT with us, and we'd bring scout snipers with us. We'd bring like mortars, and we'd bring all these guys. Like we'd throw them in the back of these UTVs. We'd take like 3 or 4 out. We'd split up, and what we'd do is we'd take like adjacent positions, and we just start listening to ICOM chatter with SIGINT. And then once we start getting like things that sound sketchy, because we had interpreters with us, we start getting intersecting grids for where those transmissions are coming from, and we start like getting ISR involved and like, hey, go check out this spot. And then after these missions, what we did was we'd come back and we'd make like an intel product and pass it on, like, hey, we got this stuff in real time. And the SIGINT guys would do their thing, and the human, and we were trying to coordinate that and just be proactive in them knowing that we weren't like just going to sit by and allow them to, plan things. And this is building up to the point where we receive intel from they tell us it's a credible firsthand reporting source, but we know how that goes. Of there is a imminent attack planned on the base with a specific VBID, which was like a dump truck filled with whatever, and it was going to come on this day, and it was going to come through this like very specific details, which normally they don't give. So we're like, okay, do we allow it to get to our ECP, or are
Yeah.
we going to do something
Try to
about it?
intercept that thing and
Right. So
yeah.
what we did was like, all right, we know the avenue in which we have an idea of the avenue in which it's coming from. So we got our guys together, and this might have been like one of the last ones that we did, if not close to it. And we get the guys together and we come up with a plan for this. So we get like all our rockets, we get, we got some mortars with us, we got everything that we could think of. And I remember doing the briefing for this and talking to these dudes about like, all right, if we see this truck, like, what are we going to do? Because if we're within rocket range of this truck, that could be close, or that could be far, and that could, we don't know. So like, what are our immediate action plans going to be for
Yeah.
eyes on this truck, right?
Yeah. What are the
And
ROEs? All that shit.
all the stuff that goes into it. And then we have everybody sitting around this table for this briefing. We even had one of the guys that was running ISR for us was a former Green Beret, so he had a lot of experience. I think he was a breacher, so we had a lot of experience there. And we're sitting around. We got the snipers, the mortars, all the attachments, machine guns, all this stuff, and we're just going through these things. And I remember the dude who was in the Green Beret. He was saying to the guys, he's like, just so you guys know, if we go out there and we intercept this vehicle, there's a very, very high likelihood that there's going to be significant casualties associated with it. And and he said, like, he's like, I believe in this mission. I believe what we're doing. The choice is, we go out there and prevent it from coming toward the fob, or do we allow it to come to the fob? So he kind of gave like a little pep talk, like a little motivational talk about like you don't have to do this. This is like a proactive mission that we handpicked the guys for this, and everyone's there because they want to do it. And so he's like, so there is a very high likelihood that could be like a catastrophic incident. However, we are prepared to deal with it, and we could deal with it. And everybody just, no second thought, just gets up, goes to the truck. I was like, that's fucking cool.
Yeah, that's legit. And I hear all of that and I'm like, that's the stuff that I missed out on, Like I'm bummed I never got to do. And that's something like with my Marine Corps career, right? Like I did a bullshit deployment to Japan and we got to do some cool stuff and we were like on standby for some things, but like nothing ever got to happen. So like I hear you talking about this stuff and I'm like, shit, man, like I wish I could have put some of this training to use and learned all this stuff, like it's one of those things that I'll always have to live with. And then I've also been told, like, and like doing this a lot and talk about mental health and everything, they're like, be glad that you never had to go to like do a combat deployment or anything and lose friends and all that. I'm like, I see both sides of it.
Yeah, it's tough, and it wasn't. Sometimes it sounds sexier than it is.
Hmm.
When most of the time those missions were like sitting in the dirt until like 5 a.m. until like BMNT, and then driving back.
Yeah.
And your brain hurts from night vision. But like, um, I think it's important that every experience that we have, like individually, like what you went through, what I went through, is different, and it's good. And I don't think one's better than the other, but I think like everybody has a path for a reason. And so like the experiences that you had are as important as the experiences that I had, because it's facilitated like what you've been able to establish and build. And I guess that's going back to my point about like what I learned in the Marines. Like, yeah, I can put a squad together and do fire and maneuver, but that doesn't apply to anything. It applies to cop stuff, right? But it doesn't apply to like the success in my career, I guess you could say, right? It is a individual skill, right? But
Mhm.
the skills that are going to translate to success in life, I think, are like, how do you deal with people? How do you treat yourself? How do you treat other people? How do you help people who need it? How do you, all of these things that you learn from being in a boat with a bunch of dudes, nut to butt, for however long. You will learn everything about those people
Mhm.
way more than, you're living in barracks in Lejeune, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard for us to see past like the cool shit that happens and think of like, well, how valuable was that experience for me? And we don't see it until like a decade later where we're like, look back and like, where did I learn this shit? And it's like, oh, I lived with 150 dudes in like 100-yard room.
Yeah.
And, you learn about people and you learn how to manage people and you learn how to deal with them when they're fucking angry and like bent out of shape on like, testosterone and
Mhm.
SARMs and chow hall food. And it's like, dude, the personalities, man, you learn so much, and I think we overlook it. So I don't want you to think or feel like one is better than the other. I think it's like super important that we like I respect anybody who served, and I think everybody brings something to the table, especially like years after, dude. It's super important. So like, don't sell yourself short, man. That
Yeah.
stuff's
Well,
awesome.
I appreciate you saying that. I really do appreciate you saying that. Because I that's something that I kind of always have struggled with a little bit, and I feel like a lot of other people too. Like you 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 join the infantry Marine Corps, or like if you join the army and you go the 11 Bravo route, like you're joining for that single thing. Like you do all this training and everything to go to combat and actually use those skills. But no, I appreciate you saying that. That feels good. That feels good. And then so the last thing that I have with the military really quick, and then I kind of want to transition because I got about like 20 minutes left before I got
Yeah,
to
that's
get some
fine.
shut eye before work. This is in regards to mental health. So back in your time and now everything that you're seeing with the especially with what's going on like today, with the pull out of Afghanistan, the Abbey Gate, the seeing people coming into our country, and now this shit happening that's very real now. What are some kind of things to take away from everything that's happening now, and some advice for the military community, and then like specifically those people that were in Afghanistan, like you and all this, to just have that coming into our country.
Hmm. Let me see if I could split this up into parts. So I guess the like the feelings about the withdrawal and all that stuff, is that kind of where you're going with like.
Yeah, kind of like the withdrawal, everything to take away, like advice, the mental health kind of side of things, where it's like you deploy, you go, you do all these combat deployments, like you're picking up your buddy's legs, all this shit, just to pull out so terribly. You have all the everything that happened at Abbey Gate, and then you have the terrible withdrawal, and then you have the shit that's going on, like literally right now, today, December 5th.
It's if I was to sum it up into one word and be honest about it, I would say it feels like a betrayal. um I don't think of a like another word that would describe it, because you look at, let's say, Abbey Gate, for example. That happened the day before my daughter was born. So like that was, obviously like on my mind.
Yeah.
And to see like what happened over the years, because when I went to boot camp, I went with guys that were 2.6 and 3.6 guys, and they were going to get pulled to replace guys all the time. So they're leaving like SOI early. So, and then, some of them, don't come back, or some of them, like one of my buddies, he gets pulled from SOI early. Still friends with him to this day. He gets pulled. He goes overseas to be a, relief. And then he gets shot in the face and in the hand, like his third day there. And he comes back. And then I run into him again in Afghanistan in 2011. So like he got pulled right out of SOI, and then and the next time I see him, he's shot, and then the next time I see him again, we're in country again. It's like this dude has committed so much,
Hmm.
sacrificed so much, and then Abbey Gate happens, and it's like, dude, like it goes back to like that's shit leadership. Like it's such bad leadership at the highest level. Same thing with the departments we talked about earlier, how like that lieutenant is going to be there forever,
Yep.
right? You're never going to be able to replace that dude in the time that he's there to affect change with the people that are here now, right? It doesn't math, right? Same thing with like the generals like in charge of Abbey Gate. Like the only reason I have insight into any of it was I had my business brand new at the time, and one of my buddies, he left the Marine Corps. He was a scouts in the Scout Sniper platoon, left to go to the Army to go through their program where you go to medical school and you serve the Army for like 10 or 15 years and they pay for your medical school. You go be a doctor in the Army. So he's doing that. He's doing a rotation at Walter Reed. And he's like, dude, I want you to make me a knuckle for a sniper. I'm like, oh, sweet, no problem. So I make this knuckle. I send it to him. He sends me a picture of who the knuckle's for. It was for Tyler Vargas. So he was the one of the guys that was blown up at Abbey Gate and lost both legs and an arm. So it's like just straight up betrayal and incompetent leadership, and yeah, at like the highest levels. It's the only way I think I could sum it up.
Yeah, no, I think it's a perfect way of summing it up, and I don't know if it's something that's kind of being talked about a lot with it right now. And then I keep thinking about these veterans like what you just said, where like they sacrifice so much everything, and now it's essentially, and we don't talk about politics on here, but like it's coming into our own country, and we're seeing it. And like the National Guard, the two service members get shot and killed in U.S. soil, and it's like it's ridiculous, and it's tough for me to see. So I'm just imagining, like some of these service members out there have to be struggling with it mentally. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They're just going stir crazy. So I was just curious your opinion on that.
Yeah, and if there's anything like a silver lining to it, I guess it's the betrayal's there, right? But it doesn't discredit the good things that all the dudes did. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to, and it's hard, right? Because I still struggle with it quite a bit. But compartmentalize, like,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's probably the most difficult for the guys that were there because they're enduring that. That is their moment, right? But for all the guys that came before, in any military, service in any of the GWAT era, like all of those things weren't bad because of this event. It doesn't discredit the things that the guys did, even though it definitely feels like that because the people that made those decisions on that day in Abbey Gate that led to those guys getting messed up is not the same people that were leading dudes, or maybe it was, but it was not the same people or decisions that were guiding you earlier on in the early years of the war or any time before that. So that is that is a moment that I think is hard to compartmentalize, but it's important for us because it shouldn't discredit the rest of our time or anybody else's time, but it's very hard to separate it's easier said than done.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's a good way of summing that up. And then last thing with the military, really quick, we're still
Yeah.
seeing suicides, still seeing the mental health, still the stigma, military units. Hey, can you guys talk about mental health and the resources you provide? Yep, sure. And then I get a talking to saying we can't promote a nonprofit organization in uniform. There's still some challenges going on there. What are your thoughts on mental health in the military, and what can we do to reduce the suicides?
Um, the age old question, right? If we had the answer to that. Um, I think it starts with leadership. And I think it starts with leadership, like small unit leadership, meaning like team leaders and the guys that are with the guys, like actually being leaders. And not to say that they aren't, right? But understanding your people and being able to actually lead your people. Because if you are actually leading your people, It means that you are doing everything that you can to ensure their success. It is not do what I do because I said what I, you know, say, do what I say because I said so. It's like, hey, this is our mission. I will give you everything that you need to accomplish this, which builds trust. And you allow them to make choices, and they'll make bad ones and good ones. And you reinforce the good ones, and you hold the standard for the bad ones, and you let them learn. That builds trust. Once we have trust, now when that person has a problem, they can go up to you and be like, dude,
Yep.
like there's something like I can't handle this, or like this really fucked me up. But if you don't have that, there's no way that guys are going to be open enough to do that. And I think the second thing is leadership at the higher level, right? Because just like me in that example where I passed up word about the kid that said he wanted to kill himself, if the higher leadership isn't on the same page and the first thing that they do is send him to p-hop and isolate him in a room, there's no way in hell he's going to say anything to anybody ever again, because he's going to feel like I know what's going to happen, right? So if I think all it is be good leaders, and leadership is not a rank. It is not a thing that you put on your collar. It is a action. It is a verb. It is a task, and anybody can do that. So if everybody is looking out for each, has their best interest at heart, right? And that includes mission success. It's not to say like troop welfare is more important than mission success, right? But you have that at the lowest level and at the highest level. And that dude reports it to his team leader. He reports it to the platoon sergeant. It gets up to the CO, and they sit down. They're like, dude, this is a squared away dude. What are we going to do for him? And you ask him, like, what can we do to help you? Just like, hey, we got to do this mission. What do I need to do to facilitate your success? It's the same thing. What can I do to facilitate your success through this hard time? Is that you need this time off to go be with your family, or did you have a loss in the family, or are you dealing with it, like, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
Ignoring that and brushing under the rug. Like, you had got, I'm sure you've seen it. You have someone whose father died, and you're on a field op, or you're like in training, and they're like, oh no, you got to wait till we get back. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like, do you think that dude is ever going to trust you?
Yeah.
Hell
Or
no.
want to go above and beyond to perform for you.
Nope. Not a chance in
Yeah.
hell. Not a
Yeah.
chance. So
Yeah. No, I get that. That makes a lot of sense, and I completely agree with you. And kind of want to transition into the law enforcement first responder side of things. Do you think it's somewhat of the same thing? Because obviously we're I personally see all these financial assistance and therapy requests to come work with our therapist through the nonprofit,
mhm.
and a lot of the times it's lack of resources. They don't know where to go. They don't want to reach out to their peer support, EAP, chain of command. They don't want to wear a suit at the front desk of the police department taking walk-in online reports. If you get placed on a psychiatric hold, they're taking your firearm, your beautiful staccato 3.5 or whatever the new one is. Like, they're taking all these things from you. So many people are reaching out to us, and it's like there's still a problem in our first responder community. So, can you touch on that really quick? Just get your opinion, and the suicide rate as well, and what we could do.
Yeah, I would say, I would even go as far to say, like, I think it is worse. I think I would say I've known more veterans that have committed suicide. One, I have more friends that have committed suicide and died of drug overdoses than I do that have been killed by enemy combatants or criminals in the street. Like, significant number, multiple a year for like the past 15 years, right? And so, but I think the veterans are what I've seen is they're very quick to make that decision, that permanent decision. Cops, the environment with cops and mental health, I think, is way worse. And it's worse because cops are responding. Most of our calls are mental health. So you're responding to mental health. You know how mental health folks get treated, whether it's, you know, someone you're going to commit to the hospital, or someone who's, having a manic episode and they're a barricade, or, anything like that, right? You see this firsthand. So for someone to raise their hand and be like, hey, I have an issue, knowing full well what could happen as a result is, like, I think is really hard. And on top of that, we have the same issue in law enforcement where, um, the resources are always talked about. No one uses it. Nobody wants to talk to each other about what they're going through. And I think it's worse, man. And it's sad. It's sad. And I'll say this, my last agency I was with, I was really close with a lot of guys. I liked working in the city. It was fun. But I still stay in contact with them. And they had a call recently that made the news where they found a 11-year-old girl dead, shoved in a mattress inside of a barrel. And the person that killed this girl was her father, I believe. And so they find out this. So I'm reaching out to people at the PD. I'm like, hey, you guys doing all right with the call? Like, what's up? And they're like, oh yeah, these two guys responded. And I was like, okay, so I know who they are, so I reach out to them. I'm like, you doing all right? And they're like, dude, that was rough. And so, especially one of them has kids, and he goes, this is case in point right here. He said, you're the first person that reached out to me. Not even my agency asked me or said or did anything. And it was like, that's the problem. That is the problem. You got two guys, one of them who has kids, shows up to a call where they find a 11-year-old girl who was starved to death and shoved in a bucket sitting in a yard. And you have the audacity to not even ask them if that bothered them. That is such like, I don't even have the words to describe
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
failure, because
baffling.
that's where those problems start.
Yep.
That's exactly where they start. And then that's when, the booze starts coming heavy, and then guys start missing work, or they're showing up drunk, and then they're getting DUIs, and like, this guy was awesome, now he's a shitbag. Well, I wonder what happened, you know? And that shit drives, I'm sorry for swearing, but that stuff drives me insane because it's so preventable. It's so preventable. Um, and dude, yeah. So I don't want to, like, I know you're crunched for time, but dude, I could talk about that for forever because that bothers me, which is
Yeah.
why I wanted to talk to you so much, because like, I
Hmm.
think what you guys are doing is really good. Um, Even from having the experience of, like, I have a close friend who was a cop, who we had to drive to rehab multiple times, and that experience was like letting me learn about what resources and what you can do and what you can't do, to the point where it's like it's out of state because they can't report stuff across state, things like that. It's
Yeah.
like, why do we have to jump through hoops
Hmm.
um, to get this for people? So yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'm passionate about that because that stuff drives me nuts. But long story short, dude, law enforcement I think is worse than the military with how they deal with it.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know
I
if
and
that's your
I've heard this
experience.
from a lot of service members, combat vets that say, "Hey, like we knew what we were getting into essentially, and like and and then we
Hmm.
were back, you know." Whereas like law enforcement, you do it, and same thing with fire, EMS, dispatch, all that. Like right, like I don't want to just talk about LEOs, but yeah, I mean it's every single day you're going on calls and you're seeing terrible domestic violence situations. The list goes on and on, right? Like, and that's one of the nice things about the job. Like, you go 10-8, and you don't know what the day's going to be like. It could be a
Hmm.
good thing, and I enjoy that because I would lose my fucking mind Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, sitting at a desk. Here, you don't know if it's going to be a pursuit in 5 minutes or a three-vehicle accident where it's property damage, but they still want a full ass report. Like, you don't know.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that's one of the things I enjoy. But yeah, definitely. And like I said earlier, is we didn't know our nonprofit was going to be able to provide these resources at all. Like, we didn't know it was going to get this big, and it's so cool that, like, and our goal, just for you really quick, and then the listeners out there, is to have um so we contract and vet our own therapists. So we ensure that they're well trained to work with our community. Whereas a lot of the time you go to peer support EAP, they might connect you because it's all about money, right? They might
Yep.
connect you to a cheap therapist that he or she may not be well equipped to work with our first responder and military community. So for us, we don't care about the money. We'll pay 100% of the cost for 3 sessions at $190 for 50 minutes. Like, whatever. That's what we raise the money for and why we work so hard. So our goal is to have 3 to 5 therapists in every single state, which now we cover 49 states. And we have like 85 therapists. And then we have a podcast attached to each one of them, right? So No matter what state you're in, there's 3 to 5. You know that they're already vetted, they're contracted with us. You can take a day or two and listen to an episode with Greg, listen to an episode with Bill, listen to an episode with Scott, and then you could be like, hey, like after listening to Greg's podcast, I don't really vibe with him. Like the things he said, I want to work with either Bill or Scott. And then you have the choice. And then that first therapy session is as much of a success as possible. And then, like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, like, granted, everything worked out for this one and I was on my phone, but like an hour and 22 minutes to get connected to our therapist via email after reaching out. And on average, it's like less than 24 hours. So, and maintaining complete confidentiality. So, it's insane. I never thought it was going to get to this point, but, and there are so many other nonprofits and organizations out there that are doing similar to work to what we're doing, just like getting you connected to a therapist and paying for it is like our niche, right? Like everybody has their own specialty. And that's why we called it like collective, like it's a team
Mm-hmm.
effort. And then obviously Overwatch, we were thinking tactical where you're like looking over people, taking care of everybody. Um, so yeah, that's just the quick down and dirty for us and our mission and our goal. And then obviously the podcast is every Friday drop an episode talking about mental health, military deployments, all this stuff, resources. So that's that.
I do had one thought that I wanted to share if you still have time.
Send
I
it.
think it's important. So going off of the talk about, the mental health and LEO stuff, and I don't want to say, like you said, not LEO, but first responders in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this applies to all of them. One thing that my jujitsu coach says, and it resonates with me through a lot of things, is never underestimate the influence you have on the battlefield due to your proximity to it. And so it's a good statement, right? So it applies to the easy way to explain that is like, all right, you're a cop on the street, right? You're going to calls, but just because you're a dispatcher doesn't mean that you don't have because you're not at the door of the domestic doesn't mean that you don't have a play or the ability to influence this situation, right? So your job is important. But the reason I bring up that quote is because I think with the mental health stuff, the stigma's still there, right? Where we don't talk about stuff and all that, right? Which we're trying to change. But we often forget about the people that had influence over the battlefield that were not close to it. And I think those people are like the unseen and the unheard. And those people are more apt to not discuss it due to shame of not having been participating in the event. So, for example, right, that scenario I gave for my old PD where those guys found the girl.
Yeah.
Well, who else you got showing up there, right? You got guys on the perimeter. You got guys, detectives doing search warrants. You got guys taking statements from the dude who did it, the family who did it that knew about it, the dude who reported it, the anonymous tip. You
Yeah.
got the dispatcher who took the call. You got the dude processing him. You got the guys that are going to have to drive him to court. Like it's not just those two guys that might have trouble with it. You might have a detective that fingerprinted the guy, and that's all that they did. And for whatever reason, something happened that like
Mm-hmm.
was difficult for him. It's going to be, I find it so hard for people to want to speak up about that because they're going to say something. If they say it to the wrong person, like, who cares? You just fingerprinted them.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
but that's that, one thing that I've learned on my journey, right? Cause I've had my struggles with everything is like, you don't know what point in time is going to like break you. And you could go years, like, dead people, carnage, chaos. And then one little thing happens and it's been that year of like untreated stuff, decades of it. Mine was my supervisor and neighbor. So he lives next door to me. He killed his wife and himself in front of his kids. And it's like, that was a mentor of mine. That was the moment that like set me on a tizzy, right? And no idea why, because I've seen all of those things before. But for whatever reason, that was that. And you just never know what it is. So I want to make sure that, people, if they are those folks that are, involved in these types of things, whether it's your first responder or even if you were in the military and you weren't like on the front lines, like it doesn't mean that you can't struggle with things or that point in which you break is might not even be directly from that, but like all the stuff that was built up before it. So don't neglect it and don't discredit dudes that come up to you and be like, "Yeah, that messed me up." Because the second you do that, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Discrediting people.
Yeah. And then they're going to completely shut down. And
Yep.
yeah, yeah, we see that. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And it's definitely not just the responders, and I've seen that personally too. And it's even I've even seen it at the department when you upload the photos to evidence.com, the people that have to process the photos and get them ready for court.
Oh, yep.
Nobody really thinks about them, right?
Hmm.
Civilian, sometimes department peer supports don't even cover civilians in their peer support. So,
Or the
um,
dude working the child cases all the time, like
yeah, the
that's,
ICAC, internet
oh
crimes
my
against
God.
children, like fuck that. No, thank
Yeah.
you. Um, yeah, and we can go on, and I honestly think we need to do a part two to this,
Sure.
and elaborate a little bit more. Thankfully, I mean, we got through a bunch of the military stuff and then touched on the law enforcement, like mental health stuff and everything. But there's so much more I want to unwrap with you and talk about. And you're like, it's so easy to talk to you. Like you're really good at talking. So I definitely want to do a part two. Before I wrap this up, I do want to really quick hear about Wild Bill Brasky Knife and Tools. Um, the benefits for you, mental health, the nice thing about you doing all the knives and everything, all the tools in shop by yourself, and then where people can find you, buy them, support, all that.
Yeah, so I started my side business. So I make knives, custom knives, and I have some production stuff in the works. But my flagship thing that started me was I make brass knuckles, and mainly I make them for guys for like presents, like retirement gifts and stuff like that. And I've done a lot of cool projects for people. So I do that on the side, and I'll do custom orders and everything like that. So I'm always doing stuff. My goal is to make this my full-time job at some point. So we're full steam ahead. If people need like custom whatever, or anything that they like that I have, I'm more than happy to help people out with that. But yeah, that's my side gig.
Right. Right. Yeah, hopefully that works out where it could be a full-time thing and take a break from the law enforcement and be done with that and actually work for yourself and enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it helps like the mental health too, right? Like it's got to
Oh,
be
dude.
good and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And there's so Stan Watch Knives, pretty well known on Instagram now, got a big following. His name's Andrew. He was a cop in California and he was doing knives on the side and now it's a huge thing and he's doing it full time and they do like limited drops and they sell out in like 10 minutes and I'm just like
Awesome.
I love seeing stuff like that when people can just thrive, you know. So
Hmm.
hoping the same for you. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to buy some custom knives with our Halo logo or something cool on there. We'll get a bunch of stuff from you and support. But I'll definitely be throwing that in the description for the podcast, a link where they can go to the website, um, pictures of all that, help advertise, and whatever we can do to help make that full time job.
Awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. And then you already kind of touched on this, our motto. So it's one more is one less. It comes from an alarmy Army 11 Bravo dude, who lost more friends to suicide upon return stateside than actually overseas, which you touched on. So we always ask our guests what one more is one less means to them. So um, take a moment, but I'd love to hear what it means to you.
Well, I mean, I think in the simplest form, it is one more, like, I guess you could say that I would say that. So one more person that can take decisive action, right? Or and make a decision to in the realm of what we're talking about, right? To address something that they know is difficult is one less statistic that we're going to have, right? And it's the hardest thing that one of the harder things that I've had to do is to really take the moment and be the one more. All right. So instead of, I think, far too often we want other people to, be one more. But I think if we can be like, I can be the one more, and then now I am one less, then I can help somebody else become one more so they're not one less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it starts with us and being the leaders in our community and in our circle and showing that like, hey, like Greg's got the intestinal fortitude to raise his hand when he has an issue. He's one more to your collective, right? And now we have one less that's not there, and that process continues, and eventually the numbers are going to outweigh the other one, and that's the goal, right?
Yep. Yep. That is the mission. Very good and well put together. Very good. I like it. Sweet. Well, I appreciate you once again coming on. I know I'm jealous you have the time. I unfortunately don't have.
Yeah,
Um, and hopefully not too much time will pass before we can do our next one. Hopefully early 2026 we can come on and do a part two to this.
sure.
So I look forward to that. But I appreciate you. And where can people find you and support?
So my Instagram handle is wild_bill_brasky, and then my website is wbbkt.com.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed season 9, episode 21. And then reach out if you have any questions, need any knives, tools, anything like that. Hope y'all enjoyed, and God bless America. Semper Fidelis, brother.
Number 5.